A picture worthwhile. The Magician. The Magician, a photoplay under the direction of Rex Ingram, offers a number of points of interest to students of philosophy and symbolism. Whether all of the points which have a symbolical significance were thoroughly understood by the director, or whether some of them were accidental, it does not matter. Although Ingram is the director, who has been producing in Europe and refuses to return to America, and is probable that he understands much of occult lore, a young American doctor is called to operate on a young sculptress, Marguerite, whose spine has been injured by the fall of a huge statue of a grinning satyr, which she was completing. Observing the operation in the clinic of the Paris hospital is a student of anatomy, hypnotism, and transcendental magic. The magician calls on Marguerite against her wishes, induces a vision of a bacchanal or Walpurgis night, which greatly frightens and repulses her. Though in love with and engaged to the physician who performed the operation which saved her life, she is unable to withstand the hypnotic influence of the magician who has planned to use her in a magical ceremony. He has obtained an old formula for the creation of life and forces her away to Monte Carlo, where he uses his power to win fabulous sums at the gaming tables. This is on the eve of the wedding, and the lover and her father search in vain for her. At last, she is discovered at Monte Carlo and is rescued while the magician is preparing the rendezvous in a deserted tower in the mountains. There, his furnaces, retorts, tubes, and magical apparatus are ready for the experiment. She is abducted again and carried to the tower and bound on the operating table. The lover and parent arrive in the nick of time. Wind and rain are whipping about the base of the old tower with fearful lightnings. The rescuers trick and overpower the attendant who comes down the winding stair of the tower with his lantern and force the twisted, gnome-like dwarf into a cupboard. Up the winding staircase dashes the lover in time to stay the knife of the magician. A great struggle ensues. The magician falls into his own furnace, chemicals are overturned, and the trio leave as the tower bursts into flames and it soon explodes, destroying the villainy. Harry S. Gerhardt. The Man Behind the Gun. A Plea for Better Movies by Malcolm Knight. We have a man standing on a busy street corner where all kinds and classes of people are passing with a machine gun in his hand. It is obvious that he knows little about the power of the gun or the bullets he is loading into it, nor does he care, for he fires away in all directions, for the personal satisfaction it gives him. His supply of ammunition ranges from bullets that deal destruction, maim, or wound to bullets that give life, light, and wisdom. He loads and fires regardless of results, guided only in his choice of bullets by the ones that give him the most immediate personal satisfaction. Now and then a passerby or a small passing group raise a faint cry of protest as they see the damage wrought, but very little is ever done about it, for these strange bullets do not take effect immediately. Some braver souls attempt to show the man how to use the gun, and some try to curtail his activity and force him to use only the good ammunition. But our man behind the gun keeps on loading with the most dangerous bullets that he thinks he can get by with, and fires away in all directions, reaping his selfish results. The machine gun is our motion picture, the man behind the gun our picture maker. The personal satisfaction he gets is material gain, and the ammunition he is using represents impressive, forceful influences that either strengthen and build or weaken and tear down the character of those who see the pictures. Why so? Because motion pictures are gripping and impressive, and when you can impress people, you can mold their minds like putty. Of course, some are influenced more than others according to their development, but we all know how impressionable and easily influenced are the minds of youth, and the mass mind of the majority is almost as impressionable. Motion pictures, through their universality, may become the greatest art of our present day. Perhaps they are given to us at this time for the distinct purpose of reaching, impressing, and molding the minds of the masses. Christ used the most effective, influential way of reaching the minds of the masses when he was on earth. Were he here today, he would use motion pictures as his medium, For he knew that a nation, a civilization, or a race advances only as fast as its mass mind develops. Some individuals are above the water level and some are below, but humanity itself advances as its water level rises. We have seen pictures develop by vogues, so to speak. Some far-sighted pioneer or creator has come out with a new and great thought, and many imitators come swooping in as a pack of wolves eager to be in at the kill, to cash in on and devour to the last shroud the original idea. As the signs of the times all over the world indicate a new spiritual awakening in man, and as outstanding producers will undoubtedly sense and portray this search into the inner paths of truth, will our pack of imitators copy the vogue of spiritual studies? A few enlightened directors may have the mental and spiritual understanding necessary to work wonders along this line, and if their productions have a box office value, we will be flooded by the imitators. That is where the danger lies. Those who are not capable but will make a stab at it. It is so easy to throw the wrong light on such a delicate subject. It is easy to throw the wrong light on any subject, but it is dangerous for undeveloped minds to attempt spiritual portrayals and indications of the paths of progress. Let those who will play upon man's whims, man's passions, and even man's heartstrings, but we must be careful what tunes we play upon the strings of the soul of man. There is a way by which all human beings can be reached, by which they can be helped to find themselves and started on the road of development, a way that will also help those already on the road to see the path more clearly. We know how hard it is to reach people by preaching to them. Why not give them the fundamentals of truth through their desire for amusement? Make them think without thinking. Give them the laws of nature and truth in a subtle, clever way, clothed in interesting, dramatic, impressive pictures, so they will absorb knowledge without knowing it, which will plant the acorn that will grow into the sturdy oak. In other words, give them pills of divine wisdom coated over with a layer of what they can easily understand, until you have created the appetite within them for truth. Even as Christ made parables of familiar incidents of everyday life, yet implanted such depths of truth in these simple stories that everyone got something out of them, and the more they had within themselves, the more they received. Why cannot we make pictures so deep and yet so simple that they will bring out a greater understanding within everyone, and everyone will draw from them according to his or her own development? It is great to be able to give to those who hunger and thirst, but it is greater to be able to give the desire for enlightenment to those who have it not. We give credit to a few producers who have given and are giving sincere effort toward bettering pictures, but the majority raise the cry that attempts at pictures of better influence are failures. They do not go over. So it is the fault of the people, after all, that they don't get better pictures. These producers do not know where the fault really lies, or else they are trying to cover up their own inability. It is true we have had pictures too deep for the average audience to appreciate. But if those same pictures had been deeper, they would have been more understandable. A picture, a book, or a lecture is never a failure because it is too deep to be understood, but because it is not deep enough to portray simplicity of truth, which everyone can understand. The hidden government is more worried about getting representatives who are themselves deep enough to portray the simplicity of truth than it is about whether the people will accept the truth when it is given to them in the right way. A narrow-minded or preachy picture would no doubt be a financial failure, and should be. But a picture true to life in its reality, so full of love and drama that it is interesting, gripping, and impressive, so broad that it is sectless, so deep that it breathes the sincerity and simplicity of truth, giving growth and development to everyone seeing it, would be an overwhelming financial as well as spiritual success. We must realize the bigness, the force, and the possibilities of motion pictures. They go out unto all the world and teach, because they are so impressive and require so little knowledge for their understanding. What greater medium could any sincere disciple desire than this? Motion pictures came into the world to be used as a medium of developing the seeds of truth, knowledge, and understanding in the minds of all humanity. This is their birthright, and such pictures can and will be accomplished. What the industry needs is more men behind the gun who know what kind of bullets to shoot. In other words, minds having wisdom as well as will. Motion pictures are deserving of the sincere efforts of our greatest minds. Who are our greatest minds? Those doing the most good for humanity. There is no other measure for greatness. Symbolism of the Thief of Baghdad. Photoplay uses universal language by Harry S. Gerhardt. To the average patron of the modern movie picture, the spectacular production of The Thief of Baghdad was but one more super drama devised for man's amusement, and as a starring vehicle for the versatile and athletic Douglas Fairbanks, together with a love story that earns itself a place in the library of great loves. Many will agree that the picture presents a forceful lesson of the necessity of working and earning the happiness that we are all so intensely desiring. The student of literature will see in its allegory of magic, invisibility, and silver chests a similarity to that great acknowledged masterpiece of literature, The Idylls of the King, with its search for the Holy Grail. It remains, however, for the student of symbolism and occultism to interpret the real inner meaning of the many mysterious turns in the photodrama that intrigue the interest of the spectator and stir vague thoughts and ideas he cannot quite express. The real genius in the picture lies not in the external magnificence, but in the internal ideas, the symbols that have been presented in all ages, in all religions, and in all philosophies. The search for happiness is universal. Whatever man seeks for, aspires to, be it wealth, love, knowledge, sensual pleasures, or religious experience, each is his conception of happiness. So the picture, The Thief of Baghdad, is universal in its appeal and universally helpful in the lesson it conveys. The thief is the symbol of man, every man that comes into the world, you and I, and our neighbor. Baghdad is the earth, man's home, the stage of his experiences. Man is a thief. Every man is a thief at one stage of his growth when he takes what he has not earned. Most of us in this life have ceased to have the itching palm for the actual stealing of material things, but we are not adverse to acquiring things through the prestige of wealth, of social position, or by force of personality. Man believes with the thief. What I want I take. My reward is here. Paradise is a fool's dream, and Allah a myth. Man has an evil associate who lives in the depth of his subconscious mind, ever suggesting clever ways to attain the objects of his desires. So man takes what he wants, money, jewelry, food, clothing, and is quick to seize anything that will give him advantage over his fellows. So he takes the magic rope of Ispahan, woven from witch's hair in the caverns of the jinn. He will use supernatural means to gain his ends. He does not earn them. He will even take advantage of religious observances to acquire social or business advantage, as in our own day. The man of the world, the thief, mocks the holy man in the mosque when he exhorts man to earn his happiness. By toil the sweets of human life are found. Thou liest, says the thief. My reward is here, and so man thinks. And man is right, but he receives what he deserves, and it generally is suffering instead of happiness. So the daily life of man runs along until a great experience shakes him out of his egotism. Now come the porters bearing gifts for the princess. Man cares nothing for the princess, but would have the wealth of the palace. At night he enters. At night we all enter those realms of sleep, into those worlds of emotion and mind, the astral and mental planes where our consciousness is enlarged beyond the waking. These realms are guarded by strong bars and the animals of our lower natures to prevent the bringing through the night or sleep consciousness. Only in dreams, those essences of reality that filter through, do we remember, and how vague and distorted they are. In the secret chambers of the palace, still with thoughts of stealing, man has a new experience. He is given a vision of a new type of happiness, the sleeping princess. The princess symbolically is happiness. But what is happiness? If we search the philosophies, the religions of the world, we find that all are agreed that happiness or peace or bliss is attained in the possession of a higher state of consciousness. To Walt Whitman and Edward Carpenter, it was the cosmic consciousness. To the Christian, that mystical experience, the Christ consciousness. To the Oriental, the Buddhic consciousness. To the occultist, the attainment of perfection, the higher self. The pursuit of happiness is the pursuit of the one self, the oversoul, the divine self, which we possess in common. Our pursuit of sensual things, of pleasure, of jazz, etc., are erroneous conceptions of happiness. But like Solomon, we do not realize that real happiness lies within until we have exhausted the vanities of the external pursuit. So man sees a vision of this higher state of happiness, asleep within his superconsciousness. Man forgets his thoughts of stealing jewels. He now only desires to touch the hand of the princess. She wakes. Man has profaned the Holy of Holies by daring so much without earning the right. He finally escapes, after a nightmare experience, with a dream, a remembrance of the vision. A slipper, you see, he could not even reach her feet, only the protective covering. "Where is the treasure?" asks the evil associate. But the meaning of treasure has been transformed during that nocturnal experience. "'Tis here," showing the slipper. "'Tis here," touching the heart, the symbol of the astral plane. And "'tis here," touching the head, the symbol of the mental plane. Dawn and early princes are also in search of happiness. They come wooing the princess. And the princess, the higher self, knows of their coming and is ready to join herself to him who is worthy of his higher state. The universal self is the one life of all of us. But the happiness of that existence is only for those who are superior among men, who have evolved through many lives to the place where it is possible to become more than human by joining with his higher self. So the princess learns that he who first touches the rose tree in the garden will be the successful suitor. The ancient method of the sandboard and the sands of Mecca, shaping a rose, is the outer symbol. The rose has ever been a symbol of occultism, of the evolving life within the heart of man which unfolds to perfection. It is the symbol of the rosy cross, together with the cross which must be borne in service to humanity as the rose unfolds. A tree is also one of the most prominent symbols of secret teaching. We find it as the tree of knowledge in the Garden of Eden, and the tree of life, Yggdrasil, of the Norse tradition. Man, pondering over his vision and the slipper, turns again towards the palace. His whole life has changed. He is sorrowfully aware of the vast gulf that separates him from this new experience. The evil associate comments, "Nizzy Noodle." He's turned lovebird. The evil or lower part of ourselves, grounded in the past, the subconsciousness of self and of race, cannot comprehend these higher experiences, but follows after, ready to suggest the accustomed ways of acquiring all things. The taking method. This method he suggests as from a vine-like tree that behold the princess. His plan calls for a drug and taking by force. Some degenerate religions of the Orient and the American Indian require soma juice and the peyote bean. And it is well known that drugs will produce visions and psychic experiences, which, however, are fleeting and most dangerous as they leave the gate open for the lowest and most degraded entities of the psychic world. Real teachers of occultism always condemn their use. But man, knowing no other method than cunning and force, prepares to take the princess, and visiting the bazaars, they robe themselves as prince and attendant. Comes the Prince of Indies, whose palace is studded with 100,000 rubies. He represents the power of wealth, but the princess likes him for all his rubies. The rich man cannot attain happiness just because of wealth. Comes the Prince of Persia, who depends upon the power of ancestry and inheritance. He himself, like many with inherited riches, is fat and gross, as if he fed on lard. A true sensualist. "Praise Allah, he touched not the rose tree," exclaims the princess. He who seeks pleasures through the senses would not think of growth or unfoldment. Comes Chamshang, the prince of Mongols, king of Hosho, and ruler of Wak. He represents the power of intrigue or secret organization for the purpose of selfish ends. He is symbolical of the dark forces, the dark brotherhood, black magicians. They too know of powers of higher self, which they would use for selfish ends, for that is black magic, the use of any power for the lower self. Learning of the rose tree prophecy, he goes to touch it. "Oh, horrible, he chills my blood with fear," says the princess. Then comes Ahmed, prince of the isles, of the seas, and of the 7 palaces, man in borrowed plumage. See how he rides. A prince indeed. 'Tis he would make me happy. The higher self is ever seeking union with the man who is a real man. A bee in the rose repels the Mongol, stings the horse, and the thief of Baghdad drives with true Fairbank technique into the heart of the rosebush, thus fulfilling the prophecy and showing the working of karma, the law of cause and effect, ripe karma in this case, that which we call fate, we having caused it in this or other lives. When it is due to affect us again, it seems like fate, but nothing happens we do not deserve, nor for which we are not responsible. Man plans to carry out the scheme with the rose, the drug, and the stealing. Notice, he must climb to where the princess is. Even the brief meeting must be earned. Again he would take by force. He presents the rose, but she smells not, protected by a higher law. He kissed her hand, awakening love. He realizes his unworthiness in the presence of this exalted consciousness and prevents her smelling the rose. For a brief moment, he has the experience of ecstatic happiness and the first kiss, but knows his unworthiness and with the call of evil below, even refuses a second kiss. Man is learning. Happiness must be earned. We must away from here, he says. 'Twas wrong to come. But he is escorted to the Caliph, the ruler of Baghdad, symbolical of the inner governing forces. The princess chooses and sends a ring which is placed on man's finger. The choice is made prophetic of union, but because man has dared to take by force that which must be earned by the conquering of his lower self, it is discovered that he is the thief, and the ruler punishes him for his presumption to occult progress unprepared. Man renounces the princess in the garden, tryst and confesses, laying bare the anguish of his soul. Other gardens, those of Eden and Gethsemane, are recalled. I am not a prince. I am less than the slave who serves you, a wretched outcast, a thief. What I wanted I took. I wanted you and tried to take you. When I held you in my arms, the very world did change. The evil in me died. We recall lines from At the Feet of the Master. In the light of his holy presence, all desire dies, but the desire to be like him. The princess, through her tears, declares her love. Then the capture of man, the flogging, and the charge to fling him to the ape, the lower animal nature, to be torn to pieces. But the princess will help the true man who is developing the right qualities. So he is allowed to escape through the secret panel. There on the threshold of the inner consciousness, full of pain, he spends the night shut out from that supreme happiness. Yet never again will the outer, the world, have the same meaning for him. There evil finds him in the morning with the temptation to return through the tunnel of the tigers, again to try through the old animal forces of the lower self. But man refuses. The 3 princes have to find the rarest treasure in the world among material things, and to return in 7 moons, again to claim the princess. Man, having exhausted his own narrow resources, turns to the mosque, and the evil associate leaves him forever. Lucky the man who, when he turns to the church, finds God's minister, whether Hindu, Buddhist, Mohammed, or Christian, a real holy man with knowledge of the ancient path that leads to perfection. This path is known in the secret or esoteric teachings of all religions, but was lost to the modern church. Man sinks at the feet of the holy man, the man with the knowledge of God's plan for man. Thou art wounded? In heart and soul, I love a princess. Make thyself a prince. The hopeful admonition of the priests has been echoed in every religion. Be ye therefore perfect, even as your Father in heaven is perfect. Allah hath made thy soul to yearn for happiness, but thou must earn it. So he tells man that on the bedrock of humility you can build any structure. Come with me, and I will set your feet on the path that leads to success. At the end of the way is a silver chest that contains the greatest magic. The way is of great danger, but keep of good heart, and you will succeed. Thus he tells of the path of initiation and the perfecting of man, a path recognized in all the great religions. It has 3 parts. 1, the path of purification or purgation. 2, the path of illumination. And 3, the path of union with divinity. So the ancient Christian church called them. Islam calls them the way, the truth, and the life, in common with Jesus. This path leads from the life of the world to the life of the divine. Some of our race have trod it. All will tread it someday. The Christ said of it, "Strait is the gate and narrow the way that leadeth into life, and few there will be that find it." Meanwhile, the 3 princes leave in search of rare treasure. They seek in the outer world, not knowing the rarest is within, that in man himself is the way, the truth, and the life. The Mongol leaves his attendant to raise an army from the porters he sends to the city. He also sends spies after the other princes to know their successes. Man, starting on his path, comes to a defile in the mountains of dread adventure. There is a hermit who tells him, "Thy path lies through devouring flames, foul monsters, shapes of death. Many have come and few return." He gives a talisman. At every stage of the real path, of which this is a symbol, man receives aid from those more advanced than himself. But in facing the trials and initiatory ceremonies, he must fight them out himself and prove his own strength. So he comes to the valley of fires, the fires of purgation, cleansing, purifying, the dross of the lower nature. Religions call them purgatory and hell. Some religions mistake and think them everlasting. Whatever is basest in us must be overcome through our own efforts. This is also true of the valley of monsters, monsters in man's own nature, evil desires, gross habits. These he must kill out of his nature with firm determination. Another aid on his journey is the chart to the midnight sea, obtained from the enchanted tree. Slaying another monster, a giant bat, as the bat, god of Central America, he progresses. At the midnight sea, an emblem of the etheric plane, he dives to the depths of the sea, and in the submarine chest finds the star-shaped key, guarded by a giant sea spider. The star is a symbol of the perfected man, but deep in man's nature is the secret key, which when rightly used will lead to perfection. So ends the first part of the path of purgation, or probation, all worked out in the depths of earth and water and fire, the depths of man's lower nature and subconscious. Meanwhile, the 3 princes are finding rarities. Persia acquires a magic carpet through his awakener while he is asleep. India secures a magic crystal from the eye of a great idol, and the Mongol, a magic apple, through a court magician. But note, not one of the princes won the treasure himself. Furthermore, all were obtained as a direct injury to a fellow man. The carpet's owners did not know its value, so it was purchased cheaply. The slave that climbed for the crystal was killed by falling from the giant head. The fisherman near the shrine of the magic apple was poisoned by a serpent in order to test the powers of the apple. Black magic, all. So the princes come together at the end of the 6th moon and display their treasures. Man now begins to climb. He climbs to the abode of the winged horse, a symbol of the mental plane, of the imagination and the flights of poets. Man rides the horse to the citadel of the moon, where after again climbing great flights of steps he finds the magic silver chest, wrapped in the cloak of invisibility. The moon has always been a high symbol in all occult teachings. The silver chest is similar to the Holy Grail. Its possession gives the owner great power of magic, not the black of which the selfish Mongol is the symbol, but the white magic, divine powers to be used for the service of humanity. These higher powers are truly invisible to man until he has conquered his lower nature and attained illumination with the finding of the chest. He returns to the defile in the mountains, and the hermit now falls at his feet as one who has conquered. Man secures a horse, princely clothes, and food by the magic of the chest, and starts back toward Bagdad. There the princess lies poisoned throughout the treachery of the Mongol prince. The 3 princes discover this in the magic crystal, fly to her chamber on the magic carpet, and the Mongol heals her with the magic apple. The earthly powers of men in themselves, before illumination comes, before the stage of master, which makes them superhuman, are all needed to carry out the divine plan for any group of men. Every man has his place in the plan. Cooperation, men learn, must prevail in family, business, social, and national relations. The princess, as the higher self, tells them that all the powers are equal in the higher sight. The Mongol does not insist on his rights for the princess's hand, knowing that the forces of darkness are 20,000 strong. That night they strike, they are everywhere, and the Lord of the Dark Face, the Mongol prince, sits in the caliph's chair in Baghdad. The dark forces have conquered. He summons the princess. We shall be wed at once. Prepare thyself. I command it. He commands but does not earn happiness. Man appears before the gates of the city. He had returned to help humanity and claim the princess. The higher self, an enlargement of consciousness. Open wide the gates of Baghdad. Through the ages another cry. Lift up your heads, O ye gates, and the King of Glory will come in. The guards defy him, so man summons the magic of the silver chest, and score after score, hundred upon hundreds, thousands upon thousands of white-clad warriors, the white host, the forces of right and purity spring up around him. The dark forces flee the city at the cry. Flee for your lives, a great magician comes. He summons armies from the earth itself. Open wide the gates to our deliverer, cry the citizens of earth. The great Khan, the Mongol, tries to escape with the princess on the magic carpet, but the hero arrives in the cloak of invisibility, scatters the guard and the Mongol, and holds the princess in his arms. Again they escape the caliph and the others, friends now, of him who has made himself a prince, has conquered himself and the enemies of humanity, has earned his happiness, and now with the princess thus attained the path of union with divinity, for man's higher self is divine. Such is the helpful, hopeful story of man's search for happiness and the promise of attainment to all who seek and toil to earn their happiness, who transmit their lower qualities into powers for the salvation of self and humanity. The end.